Do you ever wonder how you get your characteristics and traits from your parents? DNA is what makes this all happen. Hello, I'm Stephanie Pino,
And I'm Austin Dana.
and today we will be discussing DNA and its origins. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid and is defined as a nucleic acid that contains the genetic instructions for the development and function of all living things, according to ScienceDaily.com. This indicates that you would not be able to exist if it weren't for DNA. Now that the basic definition has been discussed, let's take a look into the history of DNA.
It is difficult to determine who discovered DNA because many people have contributed to different aspects of DNA's discovery. Here are a few names you might recognize. In 1866, Gregor Mendel, often referred to as the father of genetics, was the first person to propose that characteristics are inherited from each generation to the next. In addition, he created the terms that you may recognize, recessive and dominant. In 1881, Albert Kossel named DNA and identified nuclein as a nucleic acid. Additionally, he isolated those 5 nitrogen bases that are now considered to be basic building blocks of DNA and RNA, which are adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine, which is replaced by uracil in RNA. In 1944 to 1950, Erwin Chargaff found that DNA is responsible for heredity and that DNA and heredity depends on the species. Chargaff's rules is the name for the discoveries which proved that guanine and cytosine units as well as adenine and thymine units were the same in double-stranded DNA. In 1953, Watson and Crick produced DNA's double helix structure that twists to form the ladder-like structure, which is how we tend to picture DNA today. While it is good to know about DNA's history, it is also important to understand its replication process.
DNA replication is a process that allows DNA to make a copy of itself during cell division, which helps in growth and renewal of cells. It occurs in 3 stages, which are initiation, elongation, and termination. During initiation, proteins bind to the origin of replication, while helicase unwinds the DNA helix and 2 replication forks are formed at the origin of replication. During elongation, a primer sequence is added with complementary RNA nucleotides, which is then replaced by DNA nucleotides. During termination, enzymes at the fork help to start and continue the DNA synthesis. At the end of DNA replication, the new strand is one long continuous DNA strand, and the daughter DNA molecule is complete. The DNA replication process is a lot to take in, but the importance of DNA is a lot easier to comprehend.
Like previously mentioned, you are the person you are today because of the genes you have inherited from your parents. Without DNA, our cells would not be able to reproduce, which would result in an extinction of life itself. In addition, DNA also plays a big role in the future of scientific and medical uses. Information gathered from DNA has already led to the diagnosis and treatment of some genetic diseases. It has helped in science that medicine will advance in order to enhance the power of our own cells to fight disease. An example of this would be gene therapy, which is designed to introduce genetic material into cells that compensate for abnormal genes or to make a therapeutically beneficial protein.
As you can see, DNA comes with a lot of history and is important to our health and future. If it makes it easier to understand, you can imagine the information presented to you today as DNA's origin story and how it is doing in present day. It started off with its birth by many different people, then DNA got older, and its replication process became its job. Lastly, its importance to all living things is how the DNA found its worth and purpose in life, which serves as the happy ending. The end.